like I had to reinstall Zoom.
Sure.
And then I'm like, oh shit, I can only find one of my HDMI capture cards. Like, like what am I?
Well, it's good to connect with you, man. It's until a couple weekends ago, it's been a while since we had connected.
Yeah. I mean, that's how it is for me and a lot of people. Um, just I see a whole bunch of people a bunch of times during the summer, and then other people for whatever reason we don't cross paths. You know, so
Yeah, it's kind of like being in this sort of community. You have a network of friends all around the country, and you see them usually only at the racetrack.
yeah, yeah. It depends. I've got Michigan people, and then the Chicago people, and then the Wisconsin group is a little different, and then down south is a whole other group. Yeah,
Sure.
it certainly is interesting.
And so, do you have a network of tracks that you normally hit on a regular basis?
Yeah. Um, I would say generally Gingerman, Groton, Autobahn, Road America, Blackhawk, and at one point there it was Putnam for a while, but I don't really shoot Putnam anymore. Um, and I've shot Barber for the AMA a few times, like on and off. I shot it for STT once. Um, Mid Ohio, I shot for AMA some as well, but late management changed there. I'm not sure what happened. So,
Okay.
you know,
So you really are like the Midwest, my region main photographer guy.
yeah, I mean, I would say so, at least with Sport Bike Track Time. Um, it's it's a little bit depending on what organization, it might change a little bit, but I don't know how official the other orgs have people. Um, and I know Weira, it's just sort of like a free for all. People just show up. Same with CCS.
Okay.
Yeah. So I decided to drink beer, by the way. So
Hey, well, I don't know if you heard, but I cracked one right before I hit press record. So I got
that's perfect.
Elysian. I think it's called. I don't know how to say it. I just picked it up from the store. It's called
I've
Elysian
had that brand, but not that beer.
Contact Hazy IPA. It's
Uh,
pretty hazy. It's different.
I'm on the truth. Let me see if I can get that to come into focus. This is what all the there we go.
Oh, there it goes. Oh, nice. I
Yeah,
don't think I've had that one yet.
it's pretty good. Yeah, I hadn't done screen shooting with my R6 yet, so I had to like go into the settings and make sure it didn't shut off and all that stuff.
So
Yeah,
I guess let me backtrack. This is the EricSwahnRacing.com podcast. I believe it's going to be 105, no, 106 with Joseph Hansen, Joe Hansen of Electric Eye Images. And he's been a photographer, videographer, jack of all trades for many years. I've known you for probably closer to a decade now. And
yeah. I've been doing this since 2010, and with SDT since 13.
yeah, so you've been a staple of the motorsports community in my region. I'm from Michigan. You're, I think, from Indiana. Is that right?
That's where I live. I'm originally from Dayton, Ohio.
Okay. Yeah, very good. I had family in Dayton, Ohio. They recently moved to Westland, Michigan, so it's cool to have them a little closer now. That's like a 6-hour drive to us in Sterling Heights or Dearborn Heights area.
Yeah, there's not like a good way to get to from Dayton to there for sure.
But
Mm.
it's cool to just connect with you, trying to help promote your business. I get a little bit of free content out of it myself, and I've been learning a lot just from doing these, and kind of had a career change, and just it's expanding my mind, talking to all sorts of people
It's
without
interesting.
distractions for an hour.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to do. I agree. Um, I haven't done a ton of this kind of thing, but I did some interviews with some people when Massera passed away. I don't know if you saw that video that I made.
No, I didn't, but Mike Massera was I always thought of him as Mustache Mike. He was one of the original people that was at the track when I first started.
Yep, yep.
So
He's the first STT director I worked with.
yeah,
Uh,
so he's huge in my mind, growing up or not growing up, but being a baby at the track anyways, like learning just as a novice and
hmm
he was the guy. He was like the main dude to go to. So it was like
Yeah, he was a good dude.
and so he passed away recently. I don't know all the
Uh,
reasons.
it's probably been 2 years. It was cancer related.
Okay.
Just nobody knew, and then he passed. So I talked to Justin Chimowowski. Todd Thomas, who has also passed now from COVID. If and Monty Lutz was probably um the primary person to talk to, but Nikki Kelly, a bunch of the Michigan people, But it was interesting because Monty actually sort of broke down how sport bike track time had started. I'll send you a link to the video. It's kind of it was pretty interesting. I don't know, but yeah, I talking to people that you don't usually talk to for 30-40 minutes is interesting in and of itself.
For sure. It's like I never even talk to my friends like that. We're always distracted on our phones, like half paying attention, eating food, like doing whatever. And now
Right, right.
you just get a one-on-one with somebody, you get to dive deep, ask them whatever. There's no limits. You can ask me anything. It's just a conversation. I try to stay away from the word interview because interview sounds like it's a one-sided thing, but
Mm-hmm.
it's just really back and forth where you talk about anything. At some point, want to focus on motorsports and my business, but we can
Sure.
meander around for forever.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. I actually I'm a pretty avid phone talker. Am I clipping a little bit? Make sure I'm not there.
You
Yeah.
sound good. You got
Okay.
the better audio than I do. I'm not even running any external mic other than my laptop. And I
Right
have a
on. Yeah.
106.
It's so funny because like that honestly, that stuff doesn't matter. I watch a lot of YouTube. I don't even know if that's what I was about to say, but I watch a lot of YouTube, and if you really pay attention, it's the content that matters.
Yeah,
The only thing about the audio needs to not be offensive.
sure.
Nobody wants to. People will just not watch it if the audio hurts your ears. But if the audio is okay, then you're good to go. But during COVID, I got into that was like my COVID hobby for like a year. I was like getting into microphones and messing around with stuff and doing video work and things like that. Um, yeah, I can complete. Oh, right, yeah. Yeah, anyway, I talk on the phone with people a lot, and then there are certain people I talk to where I'm like, man, this probably would have been an interesting recording, like discussing like the ins and outs of various things, whether it be politics or solar power or racing. I mean, there's lots of different topics in racing. I mean, actually, to dovetail into that a little bit, um, when I got into track riding, that was one of the most interesting things to me is that you wouldn't really realize is that it's really more of an engineer nerd sport than anybody really realizes. I mean, you kind of think like it's going to be a bunch of jocks like trying to like show how big their dicks are or whatever, but the reality is it's like a bunch of tinkerers that are like, oh well, if I click just a little bit more on the rebound here, like I can break deeper and I can feel the front end, and it's like it's really bizarre how that's what this sport actually is, and people from outside of it I don't think really realize that. They think we're just a bunch of crazy people.
I've said it a couple of times in the last few podcasts, but I don't think they're published yet. But so you may have not heard me talk about it, but I think there's two sides of it. There's either the person who's just going to send it and has no real technique, and then there's the skilled technician who's going to tinker every little nook and cranny and change every setting possible to find their perfect setting. So there's a person who's
Absolutely.
just going
There's
to like do it the dumb way, and then there's someone who's going to do it the smart way. And the dumb
right,
way
but
is
sometimes
like
the
your
smart people
typical
go slow because they're too worried.
right, and then the typical squid gets on a bike and just sends it, and they're like, "What are you talking about? I just hit that lap time, no problem." But it's not always repeatable because they don't know what they're doing.
Right, right. I do find though if it's a send it type that had a bunch of dirt experience, they seem to be able to ride through problems a lot easier.
Oh
And
yeah,
I understand why now because I got into dirt riding some, and I didn't I might have understand on a cursory level before that, but like they're just okay with the bike sliding around and doing wonky things. And but I totally agree. I've met several people where it's like they're really just fast because they don't care if they crash. Like they just somehow don't have that gene. Like
well, so,
um
like my idea was, I believe that I was fast in the early stages because I had this mentality that I had to be really good to get sponsored, so someone would pick me up before I ran out of money. And I was like, well, I just have to send it now and like not crash. Do the best you can to be as fast as possible without crashing. And then hopefully you get picked up by somebody and continue racing and all this stuff. That was my idea. So I had to be really fast and not crash. Um, because you can't afford to crash.
well, I mean I think in a nutshell that's everybody's plan.
Yeah.
but but it's a very relative thing. it it's funny you say that because I feel like I have a unique perspective standing on the side of the track and seeing everybody out there.
Yeah.
Um, because I know who's fast and who's not. Um, but what's really interesting to me is seeing how some people will just they show up and they just all of a sudden get fast. I don't know. And like it's weird. But then other people I've seen, there's quite a few people that just plateau forever and you think they're never going to go anywhere. But then some of them actually break through and actually make it. And on that end of the spectrum too, there's some people that like just incrementally, and this is one of the weirdest things to me is to see people over the course of like 5 years like just get a little bit faster, like uh, every single time you see them. Like it's a really weird thing because they were really slow for a long time and they just progressively got. I think those people crash the least. But by the time that they get to the point where they're really fast, it's like just kind of surprising, you
Yeah,
know?
it's like you never expected them to actually make it there.
Yeah, and you can see the different stages, right? Like so there's like the intermediate where their body position's really good, but like they're really not braking very late, and they're still not carrying quite as much lean angle as they want. But then all of a sudden they start carrying apex speed and it's like practically dragging elbow, but they're still a little timid on the brakes. But then they've really made it like when you see them like coming into like 10 at Gingerman coming down the hill and like taking two people before they tip in. You're like,
Yeah.
oh, all right. He gets it now.
Well,
Like,
it's like a lot. I think a lot of racers or even track day riders, they will have a couple of turns really well set or a couple sections of the track really down, but they're not piecing it all together. So they might be like a second or two from their optimal lap time, but they have good sector times if you look at them out individually.
yeah, for sure. I mean, it's sort of the classic thing too. Like they might turn left better than they do right, and that kind of thing, right?
There's a lot of
Um,
psychological barriers going on.
yeah, the other funny thing I notice when people get fast and go racing is all of a sudden body position for a lot of people becomes less important again.
Yep.
Um, I mean, it's funny. I mean, I guess it doesn't matter if I name names because I'm not saying anything super offensive or anything. But like, Jason Bowman and Foster Wagon, I don't even know how to say his last name.
Wagon
Uh,
Summer?
yeah, those two guys were like these progressively, like they got a little faster and a little faster and a little faster, and then eventually, I hate even saying that Foster's fast at this point, but he really is pretty quick. Um, but then like Christian Ireland, I assume you know him.
Yeah.
He just like I didn't even know he was fast. And then all of a sudden, I shot some CCS last year, and I was like, "Holy, what the, the hell is this guy doing?" And his body position, he doesn't look fast in photos because of his body position. But you go watch him ride, and you're like, "Oh, that guy is like, he does not care when he's out there. Like
It's
it's
like the
super."
classic Cambobier superbike body position where he's kind of neutral.
Mm-hmm.
He's not using excessive energy. He's just kind of staying mid position on the bike. He's not
Yep.
his head to the ground like a Dustin Apgar ghillie suit, dragging your head off the ground.
Right. Yeah, I remember that video.
But
He gets off the bike when he needs to, but
right,
mostly he's just managing the front end and trying to get on the fat part of the tire or on the drive and thinking about how to keep people from passing him if they're nearby and how to get around him, that kind of thing, and less about looking like a monkey coming off the thing or whatever. Of course, then
I
there's
think
Blake.
I think
There's
it's
Blake Holt,
different.
who just looks like a model on the bike, just
Yeah,
like he does off the bike. But
I think it's also different if you're on a super bike versus a super stock 600. You're going to be taking different lines, so your body position might change too.
yeah, agree. Yeah, and another guy who's pretty old school, Heath Meister. He his body position isn't very great, but if he decides to go fast, he goes pretty fast. You know.
Yeah, so what's interesting is when you're starting out in novice, intermediate, and advanced track days, and you just made it to advanced, you're like, oh, I'm dragging my knee. I feel so cool, right? But when you get to like expert racing and professional racing, it's like you're picking your knee up. You're trying not to drag your knee as
Mm-hmm.
much as possible, and like not because it's really slowing you down. Like the resistance is minimal, but
Uh-oh.
we're just, oh no, I got some overheating going on.
Yeah, that's what happens when I shoot with a new camera. And you know what? This camera's known for that too. That's funny.
Yeah.
Interesting. Um, I got another one.
You probably got 7 different cameras over there.
I've got 2 or 3 sitting here, but I don't know. Although, actually, let me see if my webcam is plugged in, because overheating. I did not anticipate that problem.
Dun dun dun.
You know what I should have done is not set it to 4K. It probably would have been not overheated.
You got 3K?
Like just 1080p or whatever.
Yeah.
But it won't. You know what? That's what I need to do. Let it cool off, and then I'm trying to remember where the settings are on this. Oh, I think this thing might be on.
Oh.
Nope. Never mind.
Let's see.
Oh, and the GoPro's not on either. Yeah, geez, this is just not great.
It's all good. Spotlight on me today.
That's right. I don't know if you can still hear me very good or not.
I can still hear you. Yeah.
Okay. Let me get this thing adjusted. See if I can't. Okay, I got that, but let me go to the
Different settings.
and try to prevent the overheating.
That's cool. I can see what you're doing.
Yeah, you can. That's funny. It's mirrored too, which is actually makes me think I'd probably want to go into settings and change that.
This is some background information from a real photographer. So you're seeing his actual settings going on.
Yeah, if I could figure them out in mirror image. Where the hell is it's in the red menus. Oh, come on. Oh, you know what? I can probably do it. Now that I think about it, I can do it. You won't see this, but I can do it here, I think. No, it's video mode. Never mind. I'm like doing this backwards.
You can take your time, man. I can always edit anything out.
Okay.
Or maybe even keep it. I mean, people like to see the raw stuff too. Who knows?
Yeah.
Man, I was doing a podcast the other day. I usually do Zoom recordings nowadays, so it's rare for me to have someone come over and me actually use my physical cameras. So I was using I have a GoPro, I have a Sony Handycam, and I used my cell phone as the other camera. And my Sony Handycam was turning off every 15 minutes. So I'm like, well, that's not good. I don't know what setting it's put on now, but something's not right with it.
It's probably in your power saving settings.
It was plugged in.
Yeah, I mean this thing's plugged in too, but it was shutting off on me before I got on your Zoom call until I told it to not turn off.
Yeah, so I don't know. I got to look into the settings, but it's been like a year since I did one in person because most of the stuff I do is like people all over the country now. So
right. Yeah, I was actually kind of curious what kind of setups you used. Let me see if I can find. Well,
I just have these Amazon Basics little tripods over here. So I got 3 of these little tripods.
Yeah, tripods are important.
And set them up all around the room. I got some umbrellas with lights on them. Right behind me, I got just 2 umbrellas. Pretty simple. And then just a table on the table in front of me, and that's about it. And my dad helped me build this backdrop for my trophies behind me, and I got some tires over here.
Yeah, there you go.
But
got all that stuff, but we're just on the laptop. It's funny.
Just using the laptop, yeah.
Well, I have right now. I've hooked up. It's a full frame mirrorless. It's a Canon R6, and this is a Sigma 24 millimeter f1.4 at 1.4 at 1/25th of a second because I was at 60 frames, but I just went to 1080p 30 frames, so I could probably cut the shutter speed down some, but whatever. I'm about to sell this because the new R7 just came out. This is a Canon M6 Mark II.
Oh, nice.
And that's actually a Sigma 16 millimeter 1.4, so it's another really good video blogging type lens because it can be close enough, but it still has enough aperture to give you some bokeh, and then this was my primary camera, but the R6 is kind of becoming the primary camera. This is
You said it's is it a Yamaha R6?
No, it's a Canon R6. That is funny though, right? Because there's an R7 now, and then there's going to be an R1. So
I
This is
think I
a
like
1DX
the
Mark II. This is what I used to shoot with almost primarily, but the R6 is kind of becoming the more primary camera.
ZX6Rs a little bit better.
You like the Kawasaki's?
Yeah, yeah,
The Kawasaki cameras?
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it is kind of funny that the names have crossed over there, but you know, um yeah, I like the, especially for this kind of thing, the full frame cameras are good for low light, for shadow detail. And
So you're saying
although
you think it's kind of interesting I'm using the laptop. You think I should be using a different camera, external camera, instead of the one that's built into my
you could get better quality. I don't know that this is one of those things though where it's like I don't know if it matters for what you're doing, because the content is really what's important, right?
yeah.
But I do feel like at least reasonably good video quality is important. But then when you're doing something, when you're recording on a platform like Zoom, it's only going to be so good, right? I like lighting and all that is very important. That'll make even a crappy camera look better, which it looks like you have some lighting going.
Yeah, you know what? I got a window over here that I have no control over. I could put something in front of it to dim it, but that's all natural light coming over from there. I feel like
Natural
sometimes
light is great, and if you have a bunch of light,
it might be too bright, but I'm not sure.
well, if you were backlit too bad, it would be not great. But I don't know. Here's some examples of stuff that I see on YouTube that is decent quality, but I know that they don't use crazy setups. You're familiar with Cletus McFarlane?
Yeah,
Okay. I swear to God, they use phones for half their stuff, but phones are so good now.
it's better than any camera that I have. My cell phone is the best camera that I
For
own.
video, I mean, my iPhone can do 240 frame slow mo at 1080p. Like
Wild.
nothing I own can do that. Like, um, and then Matt's Off Road Recovery is another one. They use, I noticed they use quite a few. I think they use not just GoPros, but Chinese knockoff GoPros.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
I think the thing with that kind of stuff, I think the one advantage of having at least a camera that can do 4K is if in the editing, then you can crop in and still have quality, you know.
Gotcha.
So if you're looking to like hit 1080p, you've got the ability to crop in 4x and keep all the pixels.
Okay.
So that's but having said that, like Linus Tech Tips, are you familiar with them?
No, no, I haven't heard
Okay,
of
so
that.
not a computer guy, huh? Um, he's another one of those guys that started off on YouTube, and he was um very small, and he just got bigger and bigger, and now he's millions of subscribers. But he uses like 8K red cameras, and like
Oh yeah.
honestly, I think what he uses is overkill for like basically doing videos of him building computers in a room. You know, I mean, something like what I'm shooting with is gonna look 99% as good as what he's shooting, but he's shooting on stuff that's too expensive for me.
Yeah, 10 times as much the cost.
Yeah, it's a very very expensive stuff, but he does employ editors. I mean, he's got an editing team, and servers, and I mean, it's one of those YouTube channels where it's like, no, is this YouTube channel like legit probably employs like 24 people.
Wow.
So
You
you
know,
know,
I when I was first starting out this podcast, I was like, I need to have the best production value possible because like there's this whole thing where you can either have a great production value and your content is like all right, or you have great content and your production value doesn't matter. I'm like, well, I need all the help I can get because I've never done this before. Let's like
yeah.
give me all the possible help. And so I wanted to create like an intro, and I've reached out to some like videography companies. I was like, I have no idea how much an intro costs. Let's just ask like a 30-second to a 60-second intro.
Yeah.
They're like, okay, they're asking for five figures. I'm like, this is not what I was thinking. I'm thinking like a couple $100. I'm
Yeah.
looking at the
I
wrong
could probably
company.
help you out with something like that. I mean, it's
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, I get it. I've talked to a few people about when you're talking to like legit production companies, it's just a different game, I guess, you know.
They're using those red cameras. They're shooting with hundreds of thousands of dollar cameras, and
Uh-huh.
they have a team of people probably at your event that they all have to pay a generous salary to. I get
Mm-hmm.
it. It's just that's more marketed to like drug companies and insurance companies and like
Mm-hmm.
major like Geico and
Actual
Progressive,
TV production, right?
yeah, who have $1 million budgets. I'm like, I just want like a quick edit like that makes me look good, you know?
Yeah. That's what's fascinating about how things are today, because this wasn't even obtainable by normal people up until somewhat recently. The video quality of any one of the three cameras I just showed you is as good or better than hell a lot, probably most of the stuff the TV, like actual TV, used like 15 years ago,
Right. Yeah.
and not to mention the fact, like when you get into cinema, then you're dealing with cameras that use film still today. Quite a few things are still shot on film, because that's sort of what the industry is built around. But that's just a whole other expense and a whole other, yeah, it's wild. But it's like that with anything, right? I mean, anything that's enterprise is, if you it's the same thing with my cameras versus the average person that comes to the track and shoots just because their boyfriend's riding or whatever, right? Like if you're making money with it, you're willing to put money into it,
Sure.
you know. And if you were making millions of dollars, then as an example, you've seen maybe the camera guys at like MotoGP. You ever been in a MotoGP race and you see the guy standing up on the scaffold?
Yeah, yeah. I've been a track marshal at Coda for MotoGP.
Okay, yeah, the lenses on those cameras are $250,000.
They're like this long.
That big box thing, yeah. And I mean, I don't know specifically what lens they use, but I've seen some reviews on some of them, and generally they go from 8 millimeters to 800 millimeters.
Wow.
Right, like and they're able to do it. I forget what it's called, where a lens will hold focus. So I could focus on something at 800 millimeters, zoom out, and the lens stays focused on the thing that I'm zooming in and out. Like but they're built for TV, and they have to be able to do everything at once. You can't just pick up your other camera with the other lens or change lens out. Like it has to be able to do everything. But if for cinema stuff, they don't use lenses like that. They use more specific. Well, they do, but they use more specific lenses because they have the opportunity to change out for the exact lens they need, because they stop and then make a new scene. Like,
Right, right. They have
yeah,
this unlimited takes, and so I wanted to ask you, pick your brain on how those super slow mo MotoGP perfectly still images that you see. How much do you think those cameras cost?
well, that's what we were just talking about. That
That's the
250,
one.
it's the $250,000 lens. The
Wow.
camera itself is actually, in a relative sense, not that expensive. And then when I say not that expensive, I mean $10,000 or $20,000.
Whew.
But I mean,
That's a deal.
I shoot with camera bodies that are in the $6,000 to $7,000 range. I mean, some of them are less, but that'd be the high end of what I shoot with. And I might have 30 or 40,000 in my gear total. But
And but that stuff is not just disposable. Obviously, you have it for a couple
yeah,
years, and
you
then
invest in it, yeah.
it seems like it holds its value pretty well, and then you can maybe pass it down to the next up and coming photographer as you move on to maybe the newer model.
The stuff that I'm shooting with, sure, yeah. And the stuff the MotoGP people are shooting with, I imagine they hold on to that stuff for a while. The lens, for sure. Lenses do not become obsolete as quickly as the camera itself, because the camera, in a sense, is your film when it's digital. But with them, the way they're doing that isn't just the camera; it's the huge, expensive tripod and rigging and everything, because it's all about stability.
Those booms that they're moving across, and like
Yeah,
that's super cool to watch them do that. It's like a
you,
two-person team.
you can't get that kind of stability unless you have a lot of weight. So it's it's funny to think about, right? It's not just an expense in the equipment; it's an expense in the time to set it up and hiring the person who knows how to run that specific thing. And there's a lot to that kind of production.
Yeah, and I even got an opportunity to work for scaffolding, setup, and teardown for a camera crew. Like that's a paid job that needs to be done in every pro
Uh-huh.
round. They take that stuff with them at the end of the
Yeah,
weekend.
yeah, it's kind of like following a band around. They got all their amps and their drum kits and all that stuff, and they gotta, yeah, it's gotta be broken down and taken away. um Something that one of the things in cinema that I think is super cool, and I'm not sure. Well, it's stable cam and all that stuff, but they're very specific shots are done by these companies that have dedicated rigs that are just like a car that's built to do car scenes.
Okay, yeah.
So like one of the guys I saw in a video had a Cadillac CTS-V wagon with an upgraded Magnuson supercharger, making 700 wheel horsepower.
Whew.
And then it had a carbon fiber trellis boom on it that was 28 feet long
Wow.
that could spin around the entire car, and it could support a camera rig that was something like 240 pounds. And they could go 120 or 130 mile an hour with that rig. And the reason they chose that car is because you have the director, you have the driver, you have the guy operating the boom, you've got another guy operating the camera, and then you have another separate guy pulling focus. So like there's one guy, they don't use autofocus. They're literally just focusing the camera. And they all have their little joysticks, and they're all sitting in that car, not killing people while they're going 120 mile an hour with a 28-foot boom hanging out with two. I mean, you got to think about the liability there too, right? Like going 120 mile an hour in a car with 240 pounds hanging off almost a 30-foot boom. Like you could hurt somebody real easy, you know?
Yeah,
Like,
that's an interesting job to have.
well, but their whole business is built around that car and doing that. Like, because some director will call and pay them $1 million to get that one shot they want that then they might cut from the movie. You know?
That's
Like,
pretty cool. Yeah, it's awesome to see how they're actually filming that stuff and what the vehicles look like. I actually through James Rispoli, he shared something about a guy who was doing a motorcycle rig setup. So he had that like the CTS-V, but he had that set up on a motorcycle, and he
yeah,
was a motorcycle rider, and he would go around filming things from a motorcycle perspective.
sure.
And I had reached out to him to come on this podcast, and I think he's like, he said, okay, let's do it. I just got to find a date, maybe in a couple of months, type of thing. But he does movie productions and all kinds of stuff like that. So I'm like, how do I get involved with that? That would be super, super awesome to be like some sort of, I don't know if you call it a stunt rider or
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. Actually, it's funny you say that. A guy, how do I put this? The guys that ride at your level are fast, and honestly, all of us are faster than like normal riders.
yeah,
Even
normal
the
street
even
riders,
the
anybody
even the
who's been to the track.
yeah, even the slow of us are. But the fast guys at track days, they would be perfect for or club level racers. They would be perfect for that kind of thing, right? Like I just need you to be able to follow this guy.
And
Like
be predictable and not crash and like
right.
know what you're doing and put your foot down the right time and like be consistent, you know, like a street rider might miss his mark a couple of times, but
Right,
a track
obviously they
racer,
can hire you a lot cheaper than they can Valentino Rossi, right? I mean,
oh yeah, for sure. And
yeah.
so on that point, get this, um, my life is changing, man. I just accepted a position for autonomous driving company. I don't know how much I can say, but
Like a truck company?
like they're doing AI, R&D, autonomous driving, software development, research and development, and I am now the one of the test riders as a motorcycle rider to interact with the car. So it's not exactly high performance riding. However, there will be like and on a given day, I just had a briefing on it yesterday. We had a meeting with one of the riders who I'll keep unnamed at the moment. But the point is we will do a series of tests, and each test will run maybe 6 times, and it's all kinds of stuff. Like it could be just accelerating, shifting into second gear and stopping, or maybe it's more high performance stuff like getting in front of the car and slamming on the brakes uh,
Sure.
as a motorcycle rider. So and you're just testing all the different things and the interaction with the car and how it's how whatever the testing requires for that scenario.
It's almost like a movie stunt rider in a way, but not
So
quite.
it's kind of a little high risk in that there is a person sitting in the car can take over the controls anytime, brake and swerve and do whatever. But it's to develop this AI technology for software development for a major company that everyone's heard of before. So
But yeah, if something goes wrong, you could get run over.
100%. I said, what's the liability? What's the odds of me getting hit by a car? They said, well, no one has ever been hit by a car. Like they'll go over the scenarios and you'll be briefed on it and you'll say your piece, what you think is safe and what you're willing to do, and go from there. Maybe we'll change the scenario if you're not feeling comfortable with that particular exercise. We can change it up, change the parameters a little bit, but it's
How did you get that job? That sounds, I mean, it sounds related to riding a little bit.
Yeah, so I reached out to 6 different racing organizations that do coaching, paid coaching gigs. I'm looking for coaching jobs.
Oh,
I
like
just
race
became,
race coaching.
yep, so I just became a Motorcycle Safety Foundation instructor. I've done 5 weekends already. I got 2 more coming up this weekend and the following weekend as a motorcycle coach for teaching people how to ride motorcycles for the first time. But I'm also looking for, and these 6 jobs I applied for are looking for motorsport coaching on the racetrack, faster speeds. So one of them said, sorry, we don't really have anything right now. We'll keep your stuff on file. And they reached out to me and said, hey, we have this contract with this company. Would you be interested in this opportunity? Months after I applied to, and there were no jobs that I applied for. I just reached out to companies that already existed.
You got your name on a list basically, and
I just said, hey, this is me. This is what I'm doing. I'm a dealer, authorized dealer of 35 brands. I have 100 motorsport podcasts, done 150 motorcycle races. Like I've achieved a professional license. I'm looking for coaching opportunities. And so I found a couple different companies, and this particular one happened to be an open wheel motorsport car company for coaching. And So I'm on the list. I'm accepted as like a contractor for this company already, and I'm in the process of being a USMCA coach, instructor certified, however you want to say that. So United States
right.
Motorcycle Coaching Association. I'm in the process of being certified for them right now, and
Have you always worked in the motorcycle industry, or
since 2010. So
okay?
over 12 years now.
So
And
you're 100%. Like there's like the track day stuff and everything just is part of
it's just who I
ever
am.
it's just everyday life. Yeah,
Yeah, I've been at and so I'm also a track marshal for the last year and a half now. I've worked for 10 different organizations. Let's see if I can name them off the top of my head. Probably not. ARMA, Vintage Bikes, AMA, District 14, Motocross. There's ASRA, National Sport Bike,
mm-hmm.
CCS, Championship Cup Series, Formula One, MotoGP, Moto America, North American Talent Cup, IndyCar, and Wera. That's actually 10. I got them all. Sweet. I was not
Nice.
looking at a list. And
Yeah, I think I recognize almost all of those.
yeah, so they're all professional and amateur organizations within the United States and abroad. Um, I'm super happy to get to 10 organizations in a year and a half. That's such an honor to be even involved and to be on the list for those organizations. Um, And so, yeah, just been trying to, promote myself and my business. And my goal really ultimately is to be able to race professionally for like a decade. I think that's totally in the cards. It's just the hardest part is funding it. So,
Right.
I had 20 sponsors. It just wasn't never enough. Most companies give you free parts and discounts, which really helps. But they're not
Yeah, yeah, but
writing
the
checks.
sponsor is a funny word there, right? Because sponsorship isn't what it sounds like in racing anymore.
No, unless you're like in superbike class, they're giving you free parts. There's very few companies that are writing checks for you to go race motorcycles.
Yeah, it's not like the old days, is it?
So I took a step back and trying to fund it myself through my business and now coaching opportunities. So the next thing I got going is California Superbike School. So I'm going down to Virginia
Keith
International
Code.
Raceway. Keith Code is the main dude behind all of this information. And I read his book. I remember at the track days, my first year in 2011, I had his book in my tent. My tent got rained on at Gingerman, and it got waterlogged and all that. I still had the same book, the original book, and I've
Mm-hmm.
been reading it and all that, going over the information. And man, this could be so I'm going down there to take the school as a student at Virginia International Raceway, and then at the end of the day, I'm going to be evaluated to become a coach for them.
Yeah.
And they do 3 months of on-track riding and racing, schooling and coaching for students at level 1, 2, 3, and 4. They have schools for that, 1 day and 2 day courses all around the country. It's called California Superbike School, but they have posts, I think, in the UK and Spain, I believe. I hope I'm not getting that wrong, but I know they're in two different countries other than the U.S.
Twist of the Wrist. That's the book, right?
Twist of the Wrist.
Yeah.
Two is the main book that they teach, but they also have a video on Amazon that I just bought again and rewatched. It's a little corny, but they do go over some of the fundamentals of writing, which if you haven't been studying the fundamentals, some things get a little muddy, I'd say. Like if you're going by a truck on the freeway or you have tons of wind going on and you feel like the bike is pushing you around, you're a liar. Because what's really happening is the wind is pushing you and you're allowing your hands to move the handlebars
Oh
and
yeah.
in a way that's turning the motorcycle. Because
Hmm.
in their teachings, they have a motorcycle that has the handlebars that are normal that you can turn, and then they have a second set of bars that are fixed onto the tank that don't turn at all. And you can see a rider on the bike with his hands on the tank bars, and he's not turning the motorcycle at all. They think, oh, it's your weight that turns a motorcycle, or it's the wind that turns a motorcycle. That's just not true. It's you can maybe go 2 to 3 to 4 degrees, a slight deviation from those things, but you're never turning a motorcycle from the wind,
Sure.
or from
Sure.
your body position. So it kind of like changes your wiring of your brain. It's like, oh, well, maybe I'm just pushing the handlebars when I'm going by that truck because the wind doesn't do that much.
Yeah. Those are things you have to consciously remind yourself of for sure.
Yep. And then I'm teaching this MSF course and we're doing the swerve. And it's like, well, how do you teach a swerve? It's supposed to be you're upright on the bike and you do counter steering. So you're push, you're in your new lane and you've
Hmm.
swerved around that object. But in reality, when I'm doing it, I don't push the handlebars. I just do it. It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah. You don't think about it.
it's a natural thing, but like how do you break it down and like teach someone?
That's a funny thing actually in writing. I've when I am consciously thinking about it, what's interesting is there's a speed where it changes, right? Like if
Yeah.
you're at like parking lot speed, when you turn the bike, you turn the handlebars right and the bike turns right. But once you cross whatever speed that is, now you turn the handlebars left and the bike turns right. like but but once you're at that speed, yeah, you're rarely thinking about it. Like you said, you're just doing it. You don't, you might be shifting your weight and doing a few other things at the same time, but at the end of the day, if you want to turn the motorcycle, you just use the handlebars.
Yeah, and every time we get to this exercise in the MSF course, I get like 5 hands go up. Like, what? Excuse me? I don't understand. You're telling me you want me to turn the bars the opposite way I'm going? And
Yeah.
then I do this quick exercise where I turn their handlebars and I pull them forward and they jerk the opposite way and like, oh, I
Yeah.
get it now. Like
Yeah,
once you get speed and you do it, it makes total sense. But if you just describe it, they're like, this I don't get it at all.
mm-hmm. It's a funny thing. I mean, actually, track riding and or dirt riding, I've thought about that many times too, where it's like you need just like that little bit more lean angle, and you just put a little bit more pressure on that inside bar, and you get the more lean angle.
Yeah, and
Just
it's
how it
not
works.
you don't always have to push. You can pull with the
Yep.
other
Yep.
bar. You can
Yep.
do a one or the other or both or a
Yep.
combination. Um,
When you're scooter riding with a beer in the other hand, then yeah, you're doing it all the time.
yeah,
Push pull.
for sure. So however you need to do it to get the turn, and so you're not doing that the whole turn either, right? That's just to initiate the lean,
Hmm.
and then you stop pulling and pushing, and then you just more focus
Hmm.
on your body position and your where you put your weight.
It's interesting when I look at photographs from this stuff. You can certain people when you catch them at the right moment, you can see the counter steer. Like you can see, especially
You see him like pushing,
yeah,
pulling.
particularly fast riders. I've even seen where it's like it looks like they're crashing. Like because I think they may be actually pushing the front a little bit at the same time, but they are turning the bars in the opposite way of the way they're turning, and it's interesting to look at. And all those little aspects, the dynamics of motorcycles. I mean that's honestly that's why I think motorcycle racing is more interesting than car racing. To watch anyway. I mean, car racing is still interesting in its own right. And actually, I'm not even one of those people who like poo-poo's oval racing or drag racing. It's all interesting in its own way. But motorcycle racing is particularly interesting to watch because you get to see all those little movements that are happening, and each rider is totally different. Like, I mean, Lorenzo versus Marquez is a great example. Right? Lorenzo is like a metronome robot, and Marquez is like a flat track rider for half the turn and like a MotoGP rider for the other half. Like he just looks wild out there, and then Rossi's something totally different than the three of them, and you don't get to see that with a car driver. You can still see a driving style, but you don't see him dancing on the motorcycle and doing those little things that they do. Maybe one guy uses two fingers and the other guy uses one finger to brake. I don't know, just weird
Yeah,
little
it's
stuff.
also different styles, but they achieve basically the same identical lap time within hundredths of
Oh
seconds.
yeah, yeah.
And
Uh,
also there are settings on the motorcycle, even if they're on the same manufacturer, the same team, the same garage, they might have dramatically different settings and still achieve identical lap times.
yeah, yeah. David Gray when he used to ride with SGT, the way that guy did wheelies was just like, or just even the way he rode in general. He had this like crossed up, stylish looking thing that like it's almost like, did you like practice for the camera for this? Like,
Well, he used to be a stunt rider.
yeah, yeah, I'm familiar. Him and Ryan Kramer. Uh, Andrew Feldhouse actually wasn't technically a stunt rider, but he lived in Florida for a while, so
I didn't
he's
know Ryan Kramer was a stunner. He seems like he's the most like cool, chill guy in the paddock.
he held the stoppy world record.
No way.
Yeah.
Uh,
Look, I wouldn't. I understand exactly what you're saying. I wouldn't have guessed it either. But these stunt riders gone racers a lot of times are become pretty good riders
Oh, I
for
bet
sure.
because once you achieve that level of mastery with your machine, whether it's like finding that balance point on the
Hmm.
front wheel, doing endos or stoppies, to doing the wheelies or circle wheelies, or burnouts and circle burnouts and all that stuff.
And
Uh,
you're probably also over the fear of crashing at that point.
oh yeah, you've already thrown it down the road at least a dozen times if you've done all that stuff.
Yeah, 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 probably so. Yeah, 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 I agree. It's a funny thing.
Yeah, I
I
think one of my
personally,
first crashes ever, I was attempting to do a circle burnout in the parking lot on my Ninja 250, and that didn't end up ending
yeah, that that
well.
that can go wrong. Like it has a
Turns out, yeah, it didn't go
yeah,
very right.
yeah, I like to have seen that. That sounds pretty funny.
I
But
went about 4 feet, and I was like, "Oh, that didn't work."
yeah, I've seen a few spectacular dumb moves by people every now and again, but you know, that's funny.
So,
Yeah,
do you
Keith
ever get
Code.
called over to an event? You're like, "Hey, someone's gonna send it. We need a photographer."
Not real often, honestly, particularly also with STT, they frown upon that kind of thing. They get kind of upset with people for doing things like wheelies and stuff like that. And I mean, I just try to stay in my lane.
Yeah.
Um, although I don't even know if I should say this, but I think it's funny because the track is. I think a lot of people forget this, especially once you've gone so far as you've gone racing, right? But I remember my first track day at Mid Ohio in like '08 or something, right? And I wasn't thinking about fast lap times or the right racing line. I got on the track and I couldn't believe I was allowed to go 120 mile an hour and the cops weren't going to pull me over.
It's awesome.
Yeah, I was just like, this is badass. Like, but and that's the idea, right? Is that it's fun and it's a fun place to do things that you generally aren't allowed to do on the street and you shouldn't do because. And so the wheelie thing I think is funny because it's like, look, I mean, I don't want you shouldn't go out there and impede other people, right? But you know, wheelies are dangerous, but yet we're encouraging people to brake as late as possible at the end of a straightaway where they're going 170 mile an hour or 180 mile an hour, and then turn in and carry as much apex speed as possible and drive out of the corner as fast as possible. Like, this is all dangerous. Like,
You're picking
like
and choosing what you want to happen, and the danger is about the same.
honestly, I would say probably and I'm sure it has happened, but I have not seen somebody on the track crash because they were doing wheelies. I'm sure it's happened.
Yeah.
Actually, a high side photo just I don't think the guy was doing an intentional wheelie there though. The guy crested a hill. Did you see that where the guy
You,
looped the bike?
you looped it? Oh no.
Yeah, he was at a Road Atlanta and he came up over some hill that like has a little bit of a jump to it or something, and the rear wheel just like
Oh,
it's. I mean, it was just what you're watching the video, you're like, oh, that's not good. But no, in general, like I haven't seen that, and it's just sort of like, well, you know, it's dangerous. Trying to go as fast as possible around this racetrack is dangerous, you know.
yeah.
But
I mean,
that's what we're here doing.
sure. I think maybe on a track day, I could see how if you're slowing down and trying to pop wheelies, that could be dangerous. If you're doing power wheelies, that's less dangerous because you're already at speed. You're just maybe having the front
Yeah,
up a little longer and you're not accelerating as fast as you normally would, but still not a big issue. Now, I think in my personal skills set, I would love to go to some sort of wheelie school or stunt school, I've done in track days many different times.
right, right.
Most of the time, in my best braking zones, my rear tire is off of the ground an inch or two.
Sure.
So like I'm used to having the rear tire off the ground, but not 4.5 feet.
Well,
So
and
like,
if you dirt bike ride, wheeling is a functional skill.
sure,
Like
it's a
that's
normal thing to get
how
over
you go
a
over a
brick.
log as you lift the
Yeah.
front wheel. And
And so like I would also love, you know how they've introduced the long lap penalties and things like that. What if we had maybe not in Moto America? I don't know what series would pick this up, but what if we had like a mandatory wheelie zone where you have to wheelie between this zone and that zone, and if you don't, you have to take a long lap or something like that.
counterclockwise at Groton or something.
Yeah,
You're
like
like,
how
what if you're
cool would
not
that
wheeling there? What's wrong with you? But um, well, to this point though, you know, I think for one, as an organization, it's got to be tough, right? Because you can't sit there and like have, well, you can do this kind of wheelie, but not that kind of wheelie. It's probably easier just to say, don't wheelie.
be? Yeah.
When Monty ran STT, he used to say, "Well, I don't care if you guys wheelie. I don't want to see your drain plug. If I see your drain plug, we're gonna black flag you." You know, and that makes sense to me. You know, you're just out there goofing off, but you know, so you originally asked me if anybody said, you know, hey, this guy's gonna send it, go out there. Nobody hires me to do that per se. Do people to come to me at the track and tell me these things? Yeah, and in a way I feel a little bit at odds with the organization because I'm there to capture the cool shit, and the cool shit a lot of times is the shit you might get in trouble or, you
It's a
know.
borderline stuff.
Yeah, and beyond that a lot of times it's the coaches, and the coaches, you know, I just sort of remind the coaches like maybe do it without your vest on, like, because you know, because the guys that run the organization won't feel culpable, you know, if you're not one of the people who are there supposed to be trying, you know. But there's situations where like, okay, so like Autobahn, the full course transition,
You're
you
gonna get
familiar?
the air there. You're gonna get a good wheelie by just riding it the right
You
way.
get, yeah, and you get a jump too, and that is a spot particularly. Yes, every single time I shoot full course, I have a handful of people who are like, hey, what time are you shooting the jump? Where are you shooting the jump? Because they want to know when they need to pull to the right and send it, you know, because you know, you send it properly there, you're going to get a picture of yourself, you know, 8-10 inches off the ground, like, you know. And of course I want to shoot that. It sells pictures, it looks cool, you know. Yeah, you know, every now and again I have people telling me, hey, I think I'm dragging elbow in this corner, or unfortunately wheelies have gotten a lot less common, I think, just because of electronics. Also, they used to be way more common just because people would accidentally wheelie. Now people have bikes that have 200 horsepower and they're afraid to turn the electronics off.
Yeah.
And it's just like, dude, you have a rear brake and a throttle, just roll off.
I feel like it's less skill now with more electronics. Like
Mm-hmm.
everybody's transitioning, and like I've never had any electronics, so I'm very used to using the rear brake and like wheeling and coming down like Road Atlanta, the last turn, coming into the main straightaway and having to use the rear brake, otherwise your rear tire's gonna come off the ground like way too much because of all the elevation.
Sure. I mean, there's this is one of those things where I couldn't really take a side on the argument because the electronics probably keep a lot of people from hurting themselves. Um, and that kind of thing. But on the other hand, even back when slipper clutches became fairly common and started to become like, you know, come on OEM bikes, it's kind of like this is taking a skill away. Because to me, I mean, I don't know about you, but in a car or a bike, matching revs on a downshift is like just one of the most fun feelings to
And then
get
a little
right.
flip of the throttle is all you need to rev
Right.
it up before you downshift. Get
Now
that.
on the other, if you're going racing, you're not at a track day. Okay, well, yeah, it's probably just gonna give you an advantage, and you need all the advantages you can get. If the other guy has a slipper clutch, you probably need to have a slipper clutch. But when you're learning, like, no, don't get a slipper clutch. Like, learn to match revs.
Yeah, I will say 2011, 2012, 13, and 14, I didn't have a slipper clutch. It was only until I got the Triumph in 2015 that I had a slipper clutch. So I raced for a year a novice, 2 years an expert before I even had a slipper clutch. And once
Sure.
I had the slipper clutch, I was like, holy shit, you're telling me my competitors had this the whole time? Like, are you kidding me? And so once I'm a firm believer in start with shitty machinery, start with something cheap, whatever it is, whether it's a mountain bike, whether it's a motorcycle, whether it's
Yeah,
a
yeah,
car, start with something that's lesser, a slower engine, maybe not all the bells and whistles, no electronics, no quick shifter,
yeah.
no slipper clutch. Go out and race that bike for years, and then upgrade to something that's legitimate, and you'll be blown away. You'll automatically just drop time. You'll be faster. You can start working on other stuff, but you've already developed those fundamental skills that are needed. Like if I started with a 1,000 cc motor, an engine, I should say, um, I would be focusing more on my top speed, accelerating on the straightaway instead of working on my braking, my handling, my cornering skills as much.
I
Like
agree. I agree 100%.
buddy of
No, there's
mine had like a 1,000, and I had a 600 starting out, both stock bikes, and he was always 2 to 3 seconds slower than me a lap because he just can't use all that power. There's a certain point where you don't need another 60, 80 horsepower on a motorcycle.
Yeah, I think there's two pieces of what you're saying. One, you won't appreciate the Oland suspension if you haven't ridden on the stock, like
Sure,
and whatever it is that your bike had. You won't appreciate the slipper clutch if you didn't have it. But you also have a very difficult time if you get on a bike that doesn't have it if you're used to it.
sure.
But then the horsepower argument, though, that's a whole different thing. And I've been down that road because I had a Ducati Monster. I still have it, a Ducati Monster S2R 1000. And I most of my track riding I did on a Gixxer 750, which I no longer have. But the 750 was a little too fast for me, and it made it difficult for me to work on my skills because I was scaring myself into the braking zones because that bike would be going 30 mile an hour faster than I was used to. And I did some track days on a KTM Duke 642, single
Oh,
cylinder, 60 horsepower ish, 55, 60 horsepower. And oh my god, it was so different. I mean, obviously the bike isn't nearly as fast or competent as a Gixxer, but you know, I didn't even have to brake coming into some corners that and I would have people pass me in four cylinders and then be on the brakes and I'd repass them still on the throttle, you know, because I'm only going 90 and they came into that corner at 140 or something. And yeah, it makes a huge difference because you can totally concentrate on all those little things you need to concentrate on rather than just spending all day going, oh God, like where do I hit the brakes and actually like manage to turn in? And you never turn in right because you're so worried about even just getting slowed down. And yeah, but that really actually even in the electronics thing too, right? Because I feel like the electronics. One of the funny things about the electronics is it's put a lot of novice riders on thousands. That BMW 1000RR is like such a common bike at the track now, among fast guys and slow people. You know what I mean? And but the problem is, I mean, it's a freaking rocket ship.
yeah, it's so much bike for people. I just had a guy take the MSF course, and he's like, "Yeah, I just got a 2022 Gixxer 1000." I'm like, "Oh no!" Like this guy's gonna fucking die. Like
Yeah.
somebody who's stalling their like how okay, here's another question for you. How many times, and I don't know the answer to this, but how many times do you think is reasonable for someone to stall a motorcycle when learning how to ride?
That's a tough one, and it also depends on the bike.
Say like a 250 class. In our group, we have a lot of Suzuki TU 250s, the X model, and also quite a few of the Kawasaki brand
I
new
did I did the
2021
motorcycle safety course
2022.
on a Honda Rebel. It sounds like
Yeah,
maybe
they have
similar
Honda
bike.
Rebels
Yeah.
and also the Z125s, the Gram equivalent.
Oh yeah, those are little then. Okay, yeah. that would be fine, but I would rather be on something a little bigger to learn. But you know, yeah, I don't know, but I know exactly what you're talking about. I even remember when I was taking the motorcycle safety course, which was so long ago. There was a woman that dropped out of the course because they did the part where they teach you the clutch thing,
Yeah.
and she just didn't get it. But we had to move on. So when we moved on to doing like the going through the cones and the swerving and the counter steer and all that, she was still trying to figure out the clutch, and it it just made everything else upset because she just kept popping it out and either stalling the bike or the bike would jerk up and down, and so yeah, I don't know what a reasonable amount is, because that's the funny thing at those sort of courses in particular. The disparity in skill is, and even at the track, I've seen people like that. Actually, we were talking earlier about the progression of different people. The there are certain people that just seem like a glutton for punishment, and you're just sort of like, how are you having fun? Because they just keep coming back to the racetrack, but they just don't like it. It's nothing against anybody, but it's just not for them. They're just not getting it. You know what I mean? And like, I don't know why, but it just doesn't look fun. Like you're just getting scared. You're driving off the racetrack for no reason. And nobody seems to understand how to explain to you that like these are the things you do because you're too scared. I don't know. Yeah, so I don't know. I don't know. I mean, it depends on the person, I guess.
For sure, everybody's got their own limits of how far they can push themselves, and how far they're willing to push, and how fast they want to go. So everybody's a little different with how
Mm-hmm.
fast they learn. And some people want to stay a novice and never progress at it into intermediate. Some people spend a half a day in novice and go up right up to advanced. It's very different.
Yeah. I never got fast when I was track riding. I mean, I rode in advanced, but I wasn't not what I would consider fast, especially when I watch people ride. But
That's,
my very
that's,
first track day, I dragged a knee
that's good.
because I was just like, I don't know. I was like, this is awesome. Like it was just super cool. But it wasn't like I ever really got good at riding, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? It was decent, but like there's a lot of nuance beyond just going out there and being able to touch your knee to the ground. You know,
So, what got you into the track? Was it photography or was it motorcycles?
that's an interesting question. Where do I start?
First.
Let me back up here a second. Well, first off, photography is not my main job. I'm a network engineer.
Okay.
Uh, and I got my first network engineer job in like '05 at University of Dayton, and was making okay money there, and still trying to finish school and stuff, which I didn't. I'm a senior. Basically, I have a degree in photography. But I got another job after that, and that job paid like double what the one I had was. And so at 27 years old, I bought my first motorcycle, which was a old Triumph 250, and it was kind of a basket case, even though it was a very good looking bike that somebody had restored, or whatever. But it's just an old '70s Triumph. The shifter's on the wrong side. That's what I learned, with the shifter on the wrong side,
Yeah.
and the rear brake on the opposite. So then I bought my Ducati Monster S2R 1000, which is air cooled 1000, so not still pretty fast bike though. And I started hanging out with the guys from the local Ducati club who like to ride down in the southeast Ohio hills, like Hocking Hills area and all that. And some of those guys started doing track days. So within a year or so of riding, I ended up at the racetrack, and then I was just hooked. You know what I mean? Like it's funny. Like I don't know if the word is over it at this point, but like I'm good. I've gone through the cycle of life of track rider or whatever. I never went and raced. I've done a little dirt racing, but I mean, I'm reluctant to even call it racing because I'm not that fast. But I uh I got in track riding, and a lot of my friends were doing track riding, and it was sort of that sort of thing where we rode for a few years or whatever. Uh and then the photography thing happened because I kind of honestly was sort of fed up with some of the track photographers at the time, and having an almost degree in photography, and had been shooting since I was in 8th grade. I was like, I can do this better than these guys. And so I started doing that, and that just sort of kept me at the racetrack. But instead of spending like insane amounts of money, I was making money. And I was like, oh, this ain't so bad. And for a while, I tried to ride and shoot at the same time, but it was really a big hassle. It was difficult. Not to mention the fact having other people shoot for me is a whole other hassle. Um, a liability hassle and a quality of work hassle, and just getting people to show up.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
And getting
But
good
that's
talent when they're there.
say again.
And getting good talent when they actually do show up.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, honestly, to find uh, this is not any sort of brag or anything like that, but to find somebody who has all of the right stuff to do this is odd. It's hard because somebody can be a good photographer, but can they deal with the consistency and the volume of shooting, 15,000 photographs in 2 days,
That's a
and
lot
then
of pictures.
and then turning them around and getting them back out for people to view within a few days.
Doesn't your
Uh,
finger hurt after all that?
no, you just hold the shutter down. I do bursts, right? Like the 1DX Mark II probably shoots 14 frames a second. So and when you're going through a corner, I might burst off 5 frames or so or more, depending on whatever. So it's not like I'm hitting the shutter 15,000 times. Um, but the ergonomics on the pro cameras are also just very good. They're made for this, but getting somebody who can just do all of those things, and then also has the sort of the compute, like you totally understand, because doing this podcast is a similar deal. Like there's more to it than just sitting in front of a camera and talking to somebody.
Oh yeah.
There's stuff you got to do afterwards, even if it's basic. you
Yeah,
know
all the editing and all the like I'm sure you go through like, oh, this picture is blurry, you gotta delete this one, that one's no good, he's not in the frame. Like I'm sure there's tons of
there
editing that goes on before you even like publish all the photos.
there's a process, the workflow, I guess, is actually and you have to develop sort of a workflow that works for you. um and not to mention the travel and all that as well, and being willing to stand in the sun and so on and so forth. But Evan, who has come on with STT, is doing a great job. He fits, but he's one of the first new people I've seen in a while that really gets it. You know what I mean?
I saw
um
you working with a little kid over the weekend.
that was Jeff Taylor's kid. He was, I actually told him he could shoot one of my cameras when we were going to do fireworks, and he just got it in his head. He was like, you said you'd put a camera in my hand. I was like, all right. Poor, he's too small to even get his hands around the camera. But it's funny too. Like people are just like, you're like, you just gave him like $6,000, and I'm like, it's $6,000 because it's rugged. It's fine. Like
Yeah.
he's not gonna break it. And the funny thing with kids are too. I don't have kids, by the way, but the funny thing I've noticed with kids is if you treat them a little bit like an adult and give them some responsibility, they actually do have a lot of respect for what you've put in their hands. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
but yeah, he was just taking pictures of his dad and stuff and trying to trying to figure it out. Did you see me from the racetrack?
Yeah, I did. I saw you over in
Turn 5 and 6.
yeah,
Yeah.
turn 5 and 6 after the jump. I saw you over there.
Yeah. I wanted to take him out to like one or something, but and I do take people at Groton anyways. Some tracks I will take people out with me if they want to go, because Groton's pretty cool, but I wasn't sure about taking somebody that young out to any of the areas that weren't sort of like, I don't know. Even if he was fine and he didn't do anything bad, like I'm not. That's another thing you have to watch out for, right? When everybody's a critic. A few years back, Kenny White's girlfriend came out to turn 2 with me at Gingerman, and she was, and we were standing. So a little funny thing about the racetrack, right? And when I was talking about liability earlier, this is another deal, right? Like I had somebody shoot for me once at Gingerman also while I was riding, and she immediately walked over to the impact zone in turn 1 to shoot. And like I get it, the good shots are in the impact zone at any corner, but there's a reason we don't stand there. I mean, it's kind of obvious to most of us. And I was just like, oh my god, I'm gonna get freaking sued into the moon because somebody's gonna get killed. Like, and I'm just like this guy that I don't make that much money doing this. Like, I can't. But anyway, so Kenny White's girlfriend came out to 2 with me, and my point is, on the inside of a corner, You can stand as close to the track as you want. Now, some tracks aren't cool with that, but from my own safety standpoint, I don't care. It's like I'm not going to get hit on the inside of the racetrack. My only thing is I don't want to distract you guys. But if I don't make a bunch of sudden movements and you see me the first time you go by, you probably know I'm going to be there the next time. It seems to be fine. Well, she's at the inside of the corner with me, and we're not even on the edge of the track. We're probably 20 feet off the racetrack, but she's like, oh, Kenny's coming around. I was like, oh, cool. I'll get a picture of you with Kenny going by in the background. And she posted on Facebook, and it seemed fine to me, but people like some people just they're irresponsible, and and it just caused a big like ruckus, like you're not. And she's like, ugh, okay, so you just gotta like not, as somebody who's making money doing this, like I don't want to upset anybody. I don't want the owners to have to deal with any kind of liability or just backlash on the internet. And so it's annoying because like that sort of stuff is fun, that stuff's interesting, but then like anything these days, it gets ruined by our litigious society.
You're always gonna get those keyboard warriors, but last time they were at a track was like 1954.
And, well, yeah, I mean it's just well, okay, full circle to like what we were talking about the different groups, right? There are so many different people that come to these racetracks and they all know each other in their little cliques, right? But they don't all know each other. And it's funny. There's like a clicky sort of there's just like a lot of little groups of people that are close friends, and then they some of them get judgy or whatever. And
Sure, I've noticed a lot of people group together based on their speed or their skill level. So like I'm gonna talk to Eddie Kraft because he's like the next guy above me, and so I want to talk to the guy
oh,
right above me
for sure, because
because
you can
he
ride with
can.
him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm riding with him. It's like, oh, did you see that thing that happened right in front of us? Like that's a camaraderie thing. Like you build bonds based on like having traumatic experiences, right? You see
Yeah,
a
speed.
crash
It's
right
a
in
it's
front
a
of you.
trust thing too,
Yeah,
right? Yeah, for sure. Yeah, speed and region, but definitely that's an interesting point about speed, because at the end of the day, this happens in all motorcycle communities. You go dirt bike riding with your friend at the off-road park. There's that one friend that you're like, I don't know if I want to call him because he can never keep up. And like y'all like him, you want to hang out with him, but he's gonna kind of have a bad time because and vice versa, all that. You like, and the same deal with, yeah, it's all the same in the track day riding too. Like you want to be able to ride together, but I don't want to have to like slow down 50% to hang out with you.
right.
Yeah, that's
It's like we'll just meet up at the end of the day.
yeah. But that's a funny point too, because I think there's a lot of people that also like just feel like they deserve respect because they're fast. And it's just like, eh, you're not that fast. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I mean,
It's all relative.
it absolutely. What's the guy that was riding the Triumph for STT? Um,
Which one?
the short guy. He's fast. He's a pro.
Jason
I always,
DeSalvo.
yeah, exactly. Before the repave at Gingerman, were you there for that? You hear about this? You know what I'm talking about?
He was I think he's got a track record there.
Yeah. Well, this is the day he showed up. He flew in, got a rental car, showed up at Gingerman,
From Georgia probably.
wherever he lives. Yeah. Um, shows up, his race prepped Triumph that Apex was doing for him, set
Richard
up right.
all that.
Yeah, Richard, and at the time they had that one guy working for him that, anyway, whatever.
Maybe
Um,
Brock.
and I think Dustin Boyd and some of those other guys were the sort of the fast track gay guys at the
Oh
time,
yeah.
And he shows up, and I mean that was one of those days where I was just like, oh, that's fast. Like Dustin Boyd isn't fast.
Dustin
Jason
Boyd's
DeSal.
a fast expert guy for sure. He's nobody to be scoffed at, but he's not Jason DeSalvo. Neither am I. I mean,
Yeah,
like,
well, exactly, right. And it's like you don't get a lot of opportunities though to see that at a track day. Like, Valentino Rossi doesn't show up to your track day and embarrass everybody, but he absolutely would. Like he'd embarrass DeSalvo, right?
sure.
But DeSalvo showed up and was just passing everybody, including the fastest guys, like they were going backwards and wheeling out of every corner and sliding. And I remember sitting there talking to him, and he's talking to everybody else, and he's talking about how he was getting on the throttle before the apex, like he was pinning the throttle before, and everybody's just looking at him like he's a freaking crazy person. But I was watching him ride, and I'm like, yeah, that's absolutely what he's doing. And I'm like looking at it like, how is I don't get it.
He needs a different jock strap that's a custom one because his balls are so big that barely fit in the suit.
Right. But that's the thing. That's only half of it, because if you had balls that big, you could go out there and twist the throttle just as hard at the same time, and you'd probably end up in the grass somewhere on your head.
Yeah.
I don't know what he was doing, but he like and this was on pre-repave giant seam in the middle of the racetrack. Gingerman. I mean, I remember seeing novice riders crying because of that seam, like just yeah. So I mean, I don't know. I mean, over the years, it's kind of like I don't really care if you're fast. Like,
No, the thing for me, like Jason DeSalvo is one of my biggest mentors in my life as far as motorsports goes because I took his Jason DeSalvo Speed Academy in 2012, two different courses. I took it at Gingerman and I took it at Barber
yeah.
Motorsports Park in Alabama. And it's amazing his philosophies and his teachings and the method that he uses to teach his students.
Mm-hmm.
Very next round, I went to Nelson Ledges. I won every race that I finished by a large margin, and I was fighting with the experts for podiums overall.
Okay,
And
so you were yellow plate and caught up with the white plate guys.
yeah, and I'm finishing on the podium in overall expert class, and it's like wow, just one meeting with him changed my whole philosophy, and it's like it made me from looking at twists of the wrist and like kind of thinking I know what was going on to like having him literally follow me and GoPro me on the rider behind. At Jason DeSalvo's following Eric Swahn. I'm like, this is surreal. Um,
What did he tell you?
well, it was a lot about body position. It was about being really precise with the controls. They would I remember they had a motorcycle in the tower of Barber. So we had our classroom at like the third level at the Barber timing and scoring center. And we were in the classroom session and we would have us he would have us sit on top of the motorcycle and he'd pull us forward and he said, okay, we want you to see precise braking. So he would pull us forward and then we would see how precise we were with controls, moving a half a mile an hour, going 3 feet, right? And you would see the student in front of you do it and be like super not smooth with the controls, be really jerky or
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and then you get on it and you do the same thing. You're like, oh man, I thought it'd be way smoother than that. And so his whole point with this particular exercise was to say like, you think you're smooth, you need to be like way, way, way smoother than you think you are right now.
Yeah. Turn up the resolution.
Yeah, to be that fine, like there it comes from gross skills when you're first learning it to fine skills and then to professional
Mm-hmm.
ultra fine, and so
Yeah. Something that not it's not just something you can learn from a textbook. It's from repetition.
right, and so every control you have, whether it's applying the throttle, whether it's getting on the front brake, getting on the rear brake, doing your shift, releasing the clutch, whatever you have
Mm-hmm.
the contact point with the bike, turning the bars, every single impact that you have with the motorcycle should be as smooth as you can possibly make it to make the motorcycle comply with your control. So you put an input into it, it's not going to fight you, it's not going to try to react to you, it's going to just make that control
Yep.
and be in place with where you want it to be. And one of the drills I had a problem with when he first did it was we're going to go at 50 to 60% of our pace. I'm like, I've never done that. That feels dangerous to me. I don't want to go that slow. This is stupid. Like, why am I doing this drill? And so we go around, and it's literally Jason DeSalvo, Eddie Kraft, Eric Swahn in a line. And I'm like, can we please go faster? Like, I'm starting to look around. I'm like, when can I make a pass? until I realized that, oh, the point of this drill is if you can't do it perfectly at 50%, how can you do it perfectly at 60%? And start increasing those percentages to get to 70, 80, 90,
Yep,
100%.
100%. Yeah.
If you can't do it perfectly, hitting your perfect breaking point, hitting your apex, hitting your exit point, getting to the next entry point, apex, exit, and so on and so forth throughout every puzzle piece of the racetrack, you can't move on safely to the next level. And the next level is the next percentage point of your speed.
Yeah, it's
So
another tenth of a second or another or more. Yeah, yeah, every little bit.
so breaking it down into like go 50% of your pace around the racetrack until it's perfect seemed stupid at first. But when you really put it into practice and you apply it that way, it makes a lot of sense. But most people don't have that I guess patience or that willingness to like take a step back and like say, I'm riding over my head. I need to slow down so I don't crash and kill myself or run into that guardrail.
Or at the very least, you're just not learning anything because you're just basically you're putting out fires instead of like just working on your actual skill.
You're being reactive and not crashing instead of being proactive and riding smart.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, which is that's such a funny thing too, right? Because um even right, once I started doing track riding for a while, we'd go riding on the street and sometimes we'd have a couple non-track riders go with us. And we'd be single gear, no brakes, and we'd get to the stop sign, wait for the guys, and the guys that didn't track ride would be like, "Oh my god, you guys must be so dangerous. How are you going so fast?" And you're just like, no, I don't even know what to say. Like, what you're describing, and you reminded me of something. This is another thing that I think about at the track a decent amount. Um, so when I grew up, I played basketball. My dad was into basketball, so I played basketball all through grade school, all through high school, and I went to basketball camps in the summer. I played a ton of basketball. And what you're describing is exactly how you got good at basketball. Um, when I was good, I could hit 18 free throws in a row was the best I could do. I've been to some camps where like there's a camp in Richmond where Dick Baumgartner's shooting camp. That guy was the halftime show, and he could hit 100 free throws in a row.
Wow.
Yeah, and his son could hit I can't remember how many 3-pointers in a row or whatever, but the thing is, it was repetition, it was muscle memory, and it was that fine uh that really granular skill, dialing in exactly your form and your and the fundamentals of all of it. And whenever you listen to or talk to any even a college level Division 1 player, but especially an NBA player, and then you get to a level like a Larry Bird or somebody who's a legend, basically, none of them came to that just as pure talent. They had talent, but then they worked their asses off to get that good and continued to work their asses off, like doing exactly what you just described, like just going and practicing the fundamentals constantly. But in racing, I find it fascinating because in basketball you just need a pair of shoes and a ball. Racing, I mean, like, just getting the opportunity to practice is expensive, and the equipment that you need to bring is expensive, and so it's like there's this like just getting to the point where you're actually just spending time practicing, like, whereas with basketball it's like just get up early in the morning and go shoot and in a regimented way for 2 hours.
Sure. It's racing is one of the only sports or one of the only ones that I can think of that you practice your actual craft very few amount of times in the whole season. Like so I've been getting into something called supermoto motard racing, which is a mix of pavement and dirt for dirt
I'm
bikes
familiar with it. Yeah.
with slick tires. And so this is what I should have been doing 10 years ago. This is what I would recommend everybody to start in before they get into road racing, uh,
Yeah.
because it's so cheap. When you crash, it's not a yard sale. It's like almost nothing breaks, almost nothing on you breaks. Um,
Dirt bikes are fantastic.
it's great, and so like a supermoto track day is like $60 to $80, depending on if you have a membership or not. You don't
Yeah,
go through tires, you barely use any gas.
I
There's
did
local
some mini
tracks
bike
around
racing for a
you.
while. I think it's a similar deal,
Yeah,
XR100 racing. Yeah.
exactly. I have a Kawasaki KLX 300 Supermoto, which is a little faster than a 250, but it's not really a 450 class
Mm-hmm.
bike. It's kind of in the middle, but it's street legal. I can take it on the street. It's my grocery getter, although I haven't actually gotten groceries on it yet. But
Sure.
it's a nice, fun little bike. It's the slowest bike I've ever owned. It's a little slower than the Ninja 250 I had in '08 because
Slow bikes are so much fun in my
it's
personal
a dirt
opinion.
bike. But yeah, it's the lowest as far as lowest risk for getting arrested or speeding.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's kind of hard to do that. I might be top speed maybe 94 miles an hour going downhill in a full tuck drafting somebody. So it's
Yeah.
like you're not going to go that fast on it.
Have
Uh,
you done actual dirt riding?
so yeah, I've done some with that bike. I've been doing Great Lakes Supermoto, which you could probably come out and maybe do some photography for at some point. But they have a flat track over at Jackson Speedway, and they do
I really enjoy it. I've done a little bit of flat track myself, but I've also photographed a decent amount of flat track, which I really enjoy.
yeah. So at Jackson Speedway, it's very unique. I've never been to a circuit like this or a facility that has a kart track that's about 25 seconds on a supermoto. They have um, a motocross section that Will has built himself, and they have the flat track. So they do pavement to motocross to flat track back to pavement, and they make three different racetracks into one lap.
That sounds pretty cool. That sounds kind of like flat track TT racing, but that's still all dirt. But
Yeah, so it's sometimes they'll say, okay, we're doing pavement only, and everybody just do pavement section. They'll stop for maybe a half hour, do do big bikes, and say do the whole lap, do all three sections, and then they'll stop and say let's do minis, so 50 to 150 cc, and maybe a half hour of that. But
gotcha.
there's no real novice, intermediate, advanced, which is kind of cool because it's not like a racer practice. They got kids out there like 9 years old, I think,
Sure. Yeah.
next to me, and I think it's cool. Even as a racer myself, I'm not like, oh, this guy's too slow. I'm like, I want to help this kid. I might tap my tail like, hey, come follow me. I might even slow down for a little bit while I
Yeah.
pass,
Yeah. Yeah.
and like kind of show him the line for a section or two, and then maybe take off again.
Right.
Maybe come up to him in another couple minutes when I find him again on the track. Um,
You haven't done any actual like knobby tire like trail dirt riding or anything like that though.
So I've rode my cousin's, I think it was Yamaha IT 175, like an 86
Hmm.
dirt bike. I really have almost zero dirt bike experience other than the supermoto stuff, and a couple times in the trails with my cousin.
But
Um,
you're getting a feel for it though. I see, I can see what you're saying because I experienced a similar thing, but through single track riding.
yeah,
Um, and actually, I haven't been back on the track since I got into that, and I haven't dirt ridden too much in this last year, but I did for quite a bit for a few years. And the thing I learned so much about was how the bike acts when it doesn't have traction. And I think you're learning the same thing going from dirt to asphalt and back and forth and all that. But the front end pushes. What do? You roll on the throttle. That's what you do. Like, and when that first happens, it's hard to like train your brain to do it. You know, like, but once you get used to it, it's like, no, this isn't really a joke. Like, it's not like everybody jokes. Oh, well, turn the throttle and it'll end the suspense. Like, but sure, but the reality is, it actually probably is going to fix your problem.
yeah,
Like,
because it puts the bike in a working mode with the suspension. The bike wants to have power. The bike
mm-hmm.
wants to be in a mode where the rear tire has pressure on it and is actually spinning maybe a small amount. Uh,
Yep.
and so if the front is about to tuck and you roll on the throttle just a little bit, what's going to happen?
You're also taking weight off the front. Yeah.
The weight transfers to the rear tire, so there's less weight on the front tire. So
Mm-hmm.
there's less chance you're going to tuck the front. It's gonna weight the motorcycle to the rear. Now you're going to be in a position where you can drive and start to turn easier because now there's less pressure on the front tire.
Yep.
So it's like this whole transfer of weight. It's motorcycling, and what Keith Code teaches in Twist of the Wrist is whenever you're rolling on the throttle, do so in a smooth, consistent, and even fashion until the throttle is rolled on and you're not chopping the throttle. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
always consistent, even, progressive throttle roll on. It's never chopping. It's never inconsistent or rolling on, rolling off, rolling on, rolling off. That's a consistent thing we see in new riders, and it's
right.
supposed to be a consistent, deliberate action. It's not like it's a willy-nilly, I don't know what I'm going to do with it. It's always the same,
Hmm.
always consistent with it.
Well, it's an interesting thing because the science aside, you can think about it as and I think you're 100% right, all of it. But going out and feeling it over and over again comes back to what you're talking about with the salvo. Like you you have to like practice it, and you have to learn like how to react in those
It is
situations. And
counterintuitive because you think, well, I'll just roll off because I think I'm going too fast. But if you're in that situation, rolling off will make it worse. Rolling off will transfer all the weight to the front tire, and
yeah,
you already feel like you're pushing the front in that situation. So
you
you're
you
probably
go
going
ride
to
in the sand. It's like the sand. It's 100% about the throttle. The front end won't do any. If you're not on the throttle, you're falling down. Like it's just it is what it is. But it's yeah, it's funny. It's like you have to like train your brain to like learn all that counterintuitive stuff. You can't train it by reading a book, even though all the things you're saying, all the things in the Keith Code book, it helps you understand why. But until you go out and do it, you ever heard the term "smell the elephants"?
No, I don't think so.
It's a funny term. I forget what book that's from. It's from something, but um, basically the whole concept is you could be a PhD on elephants in Africa. You could have read all the books and went to school and all that, but until you actually go to Africa and smell the elephant poop in the middle of the jungle, like you don't really truly understand the elephants.
Yeah,
And it's the same thing. Like you totally understand counter steer. You understand the geometry of the bike changes when the rear end squats and the front end under braking squats and all that. But so you go out there and just do it over and over and over again. Like you're not gonna be good at it. Like just
sure.
yeah.
You just got to develop that your own feel, your own style, your own feel. Like everybody's got a different style, like I said before, and no two riders are exactly the same. They all go through a corner a little bit differently.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because you figure that stuff out in different ways. I flat track I think is one of those things that I've only done a little bit of like quarter mile small bike flat track stuff, but I've been to mile flat track, which blows my mind. I don't know if you've ever been to a mile flat track event. They
I
do
did.
140 on the straights.
I've only worked the Daytona flat track event, which I think is probably much shorter, maybe 8 mile.
Okay. Well, half mile is fairly common. Quarter mile slow. Mile they're doing 140 in the straights, and they're doing 90 to 100 in the corners.
Yeah, they're ripping. They're not just putsying around the corner.
No, they're doing 90 mile an hour with the rear end out and steel shoe on the ground, and they don't have front brakes. I mean, it's so the Indy Mile actually was a very popular event when MotoGP was here in Indianapolis. Um, I actually okay, real quick, maybe you've seen that video from 2009 when Kenny Roberts was at the Indy Mile. I don't know if you've seen that on the TZ 750. I was there. I was very lucky to have been there because I didn't understand what I was witnessing at the time as well as I do now. But it was the sort of thing where the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. Like nobody knew what was going to happen when he took that 752 stroke out. Like they thought maybe he's going to do parade laps. He did not do parade laps. And Valentino Rossi was there, and he was looking at Kenny Roberts like, "You're my hero."
Wow.
I mean, he's a MotoGP champion, but it's interesting in this vein in this discussion. A lot of the great MotoGP riders have that flat track background, and the reason I think that is because if you want to practice that skill, that granular skill of riding on the edge and having the rear and feeling what the bike feels like when it's loose and being comfortable with it being loose, flat track is the place to be because the bike's all over the place. You're managing like a crash the whole time practically. I mean,
Pretty much, like you're just kind of putting your foot down, saving crashes here and there, and
yeah, you
it's
literally wear a steel slipper to do it.
yeah. So I never wore the steel toe. It was for me. I think it's more of like a buggy track. I don't know how many motorcycles they really have around that because there's like big chunks of like asphalt and concrete and all kinds of stuff. Like it was not a completely it was freshly groomed. So there was no line when I did it. It was all just for the
Were you
most.
able to put your foot down though and slide it?
Oh yeah, I was sliding.
Yeah.
I was sliding around, but like for when Great Lakes Supermoto used it, I was like the only person who was using the full circuit. When Great Lakes Supermoto was using it, they would enter the track, do about half of the lap, and then exit, and
Right.
just use it as a quick like transition. But I talked to Will and I was like, can I just like do some laps on this flat track? Because I just want to do laps and stay on here for like an hour. He's like, yeah, you can do that. Just like be careful if people are coming on. Don't go too wide or watch out for them when they're entering or exiting. But you know how to enter a track, so just do your thing. So I just stayed on the supermoto, the flat track part of it, and was just trying to do laps. But there's no groove, there's no line. I was just trying to make my
Yeah.
own line, and it was my first time on it. So I'm just really just trying to stay on the motorcycle, not fall down. There's a couple of times like it gets pretty swirly, and you're like, oh god, I just shit
Yeah.
myself a little bit just trying to stay on the bike.
It's a bizarre feeling, but it's something you can get used to, you know. But the thing is, like when I rode my Gixxer 750, when it got loose for me at my skill level, that was like a pucker moment. It wasn't like it was like when that happened, it was like, okay, now I have to figure out what to do on my 140 horsepower, almost 400-pound motorcycle. Like, and I I don't know, maybe had read the Keith book code books enough to know to not chop the throttle or whatever, and I made it through it, but I certainly didn't feel competent. Like I I I know how to handle this, or I know how to repetitively do this. It was more like I'm recovering from a problem sort of situation when the rear end would step or the front end would push on that bike. And now I feel like having done some dirt riding, I feel like I'll probably just be able to hurt myself a lot better, honestly, because I'll probably feel like, oh, it's fine, it's sliding, no big deal. And then, you know, you know what I mean.
There's a very fine line between where it's fine and it's okay to push as a pro racer who's doing it 7 times, every few months, and and then you go over the limit as someone who hasn't done it in a while, and you're like, oh, that was a little too far.
Yeah, and once it's too far, it's too far.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's
it's no
no
good.
coming back from it
It's
at a
no
certain
good.
level.
Yeah.
It's like
So
I love those pictures from photographers where they're like, is this a crash or save? And it's right at that limit where you're like, oh man, he could do this and probably save it, or this could be a yard sale.
that's actually so I've done a decent amount of flat track shooting for the AMA, and then I've also done a couple of hill climbs.
Okay.
Um, and those events are some of my favorites for this reason, right? Because catching a moment like you're describing in road racing, there's maybe one or two riders that you might be able to get some of those sort of shots with, but for the most part, I mean, you're just not getting that, right? But flat track, every lap that come by, they're sideways. It's so cool.
They're always out of control.
Yeah, they look awesome. They look like a drift car on two wheels. I mean, you know, and the hill climbs were also awesome because have you ever been to a hill climb?
I feel like that's one aspect of motorsports that I might never do is hill climb.
Well, I mean, I don't blame you, honestly, but I if you haven't attended and watched one, I encourage it because it's so cool. It's
I've
basically
never been, I don't think. No.
it's like drag racing up a hill, but the hills usually have steps. There's usually 4, 5, 6 steps. So like steep hill, flat part, steep hill, flat part. So inevitably there's jumps. And depending on how fast the bike is, you might jump each step or you might skip one, you know, up the hill.
Yeah.
Um
Clearing like
so,
a 50-foot gap in the meantime.
so probably bigger than 50 feet.
Yeah.
The but the photographic opportunities are badass. I mean, for one, where I can stand, they don't care.
Yeah. It's unlimited pretty much.
Yeah. Two, though, you got bikes in the air, like ready to. They loop wheelies all the time. They throw chains all the time. Like, I mean, there's epic crashes, and then they run four wheelers up them too, and it's fucking cool. Like just I got this picture. I'll have to show it to you. Like of this guy in this 252 stroke with an extended swing arm, Kawasaki. So KZ 250s Kawasaki with an extended swing arm, and it is vertical, like straight up and down.
Yeah.
And the dude is like, his head is over the front wheel because he's, you know, like it's just, it's freaking cool, like, because it's just commitment. But
Yeah.
it's like a 10-second race, like
Right.
up the hill. And most people, I mean, it's not one of those things where it's not one of those sort of hill climbs where you think like people don't like, like if you made it, you won. No, everybody makes it up the hill. It's how fast you make it up the hill.
Yeah.
Or think like there was another bike that was a Kawasaki the KZ 500, but with an H2 motor in it.
Oh man, the Kawasaki H2. That's like a turbocharged everything you
And
got.
it was a big 3-cylinder 2-stroke.
Whew.
Probably making 100-ish horsepower, 110, with a super long swing arm. And yeah, I mean, just like it's just the coolest shit shows up the hill climbs. I don't know, they're just neat. But
Yeah, it'd be interesting to go to one. It's like Redneck Central, right?
yeah, well, and there's amateur and there's pro. Actually, the first one I ever went to was in Oregonia, Ohio,
Okay.
and that was a pro hill climb. They sold beer at the bottom of the hill, because so the hill they went up was on one side there, and the hill you watched on was the other. And none of the other hill climbs that I've been to have been like this. Like, you just kind of sit at the bottom and watch. But this was, to get a good view, you would walk up the other side of the hill, and it was super steep. So you didn't have to walk up and down to get beer all the time. They sold beer in recycled gallon milk jugs. So you bought a gallon of beer at a time.
Perfect.
And then just sat on the hill with some plastic cups and your friends and watch these like nitromethane Harleys and modified dirt bikes and stuff just go up the hill. Like,
Heck yeah. That's
yeah,
what
that's cool.
it's about, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. I mean, like, then sort of back to my point about wheelies. Like, wheelies are dangerous. Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, so if I ever ran for political office, which would probably never happen, um, my slogan I think is "Make wheelies legal again."
Oh yeah, for sure. I
Like,
mean,
why are they illegal?
you'd get a few votes. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's okay to do wheelies. I wouldn't do it in like heavy traffic, maybe, but picker time.
Well, that's the funny thing, and I think it's sort of the thing about the rules that I was sort of getting at earlier a little bit. You can tell by watching the person when they're doing a wheelie, like, if that person should be doing wheelies or not.
If they know what they're doing.
Like, no, that guy's fine. Like, that guy can just ride down the interstate with the wheel in the air if he wants. Doesn't matter.
Sure.
But that other guy, his friend, he needs a ticket.
He's not doing it safely.
Yeah, this isn't safe. He's gonna get run over and hurt somebody. Like, yeah,
You
don't
get like
do
a
wheelies.
you should get like a fix-it ticket. Like you should go to wheelie school. You don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, like Neil Scaff, is that his name?
Yeah, Neil.
The super fast guy. He was at the Grattan track. I think he was at the same day you were, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and he was wheeling between like 3 and 4. Like, but you watched him do it, and you're just like, no, he's fine.
Yeah.
Like,
And you know what? I was trying to ride with him for a little while, a couple corners at least at a time. And I was behind him right when he went over the jump between 4 and 5. And I said in my helmet, I was like, Jesus. Like he fucking sends it. I don't think there's any sort of like downshift or braking happening before he sends it.
no, no, there's
He just kind of angling it towards the apex of that corner and just like just sending it.
yeah, same thing every time. Yeah, he was wheeling out of the bus stop into 10A 10B, but and doing that wheelie like where he was still turning the bike as he's wheeling, like basically like, hey, you ran 19s at a Wera race this year at Grattan. You can just do whatever you want. It's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
Like,
Once you're sub-20s, I think you just get a license that you can like. It's the Ron Swanson meme where it's like I can just do whatever I want. Here's my approval.
yeah. Actually, that's a good point. They should have like a special sticker depending on your lap times. Like,
Yeah.
once you turn a 20 at Grattan, you get the unlimited sticker, so that way the corner worker is gonna be like, no, that guy's fine.
Yeah, he's good. Do whatever you
Yeah.
want.
Oh, that guy only runs 30s. You get 1 foot off the ground. That's it.
For sure. You know, I'm pretty excited to have Neil Scalf on here. He's brother of Rida, as his younger brother. And
His brother looked great at that
they
track day.
both are like Moto America level pros. I think his brother is going to be doing Junior Cup, and
Mm-hmm.
Neil's going to be doing a couple rounds of the Super Sports 750 class, and he's going to be Neil's going to be coming on here as a podcast guest. So looking to talk to him, and I talked to him quite a bit at Grattan, and asking him how am I doing? That was my first track day in 7 years, and I got down to 125s on a 14-year-old motorcycle with used tires. So I was really happy to do that.
I remember you telling me that, but then I was looking at you when I was shooting. I was like, okay, I don't know. Like you haven't done track. I mean, you've been racing though, right?
Yeah, so I've won a mountain bike championship in beginner. I won fourth overall in the state in sport mountain bike racing. I won a go-kart championship last year, 2021. I mean, I've been involved in the sport. Like I said, I did 16
So
events.
yeah, not doing a track day in 7 years is not exactly representative of.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I've been racing, I've been riding, I've been doing other stuff. I did seven supermoto track days in the last year or so. So I've
yeah.
been at the track as much as possible. I've been around the sport, but I haven't been racing sport bikes in 7 years. So it's like I haven't been on this vehicle in a long time. When I sat on the bike, I was like, damn, this feels weird. This feels so awkward. Like it just doesn't feel
Oh, they're much.
familiar.
They're yeah. I agree. Sport bikes are so strange compared to basically every other motorcycle. You just don't really realize it if you started on them.
Yeah, it's like my foot position is so high up. I'm just not used to it. And then I get out first session, I'm like, oh man, I dragged my knee the first session. This is like it's like riding a bike.
Yeah, well, yeah, literally, right? It's yeah, it's funny. I've seen and known Neil at the track for a while, and he's always looked good. He's always been a good rider, but I don't know what he did in the last year or two because he just all of a sudden, I was talking to Hawkins
Yeah, John
at, at
Hawkins.
at the counter day, the counterclockwise day, and yeah, I guess he works with Neil some a little bit and has helped him, and it's just like I don't know, something clicked, I guess. I mean, not that he was ever slow, but 19s at Grattan is different than fast.
19's at great. So my fastest is 22s both directions, which I'm proud to say. That's
22s is
pretty
quick,
fast.
yeah.
But 19s is another level. That 19s is you are a pro. You should be in Moto America.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I would see Richard and David Gray show up to track weekends, and man, they ride 21s whenever they want. I didn't see them ride 19s. Could they ride 19s? I don't know. Maybe. I mean, it's a track day, right?
Yeah.
You're also getting to the point where, and I don't know that Neil was running 19s at the track day. He ran it at a Wera race, right?
Well, you
Same
know
deal with
what? Yeah, go
uh
ahead.
Blake at Blackhawk. Blake was down in the 11s at Blackhawk at a track day, and
Yeah,
he crashed in 5 because he came up on somebody way too fast.
yeah.
Like, and he said so. He was like, yeah, maybe the difference in speed gets to be a little too much. Like, and I think people at races might run 10s or 9s at Blackhawk, but they don't run 11s at track days.
No, there's too much traffic, and really, you
It's a
know,
difference of speed. You can't get a clean lap, not at that
and
speed.
also the people at the track days, not to disparage anybody, but um, it's too dangerous to do those kind of lap times at track days because to do those and there's somebody in front of you, you're gonna have to stuff them. You're gonna have to say, "I'm coming through," and that advanced track day guy who maybe just moved up from intermediate is not gonna like you passing him 3 inches away from his handlebar at 20 miles an hour faster. I don't want to say any names, but that's why some people aren't at certain track day organizations anymore because they pass people a little too closely and they've crashed before.
Well, I mean, there's that's an interesting point. And I don't think there's a right or a wrong here. The thing is, track days started out as like racer practice years ago, and it has become a bit of a lifestyle sport, kind of like golfing
Yeah,
in a
kind
way,
of.
you know. And some people, and there's nothing wrong with this. And I want to make sure my tone of voice is correct, but that's fine. It's fun. In fact, if you buy a sport bike, what better way to use it? It's sort of the similar deal to like if you own a Ferrari, like you might as well take it to the racetrack, that kind of thing. Go out, have fun, enjoy it, you know. But there's a difference between that and then the guy who is trying to practice those granular skills that we're talking about, right? And where else are they going to practice?
Yeah.
I mean, yes, you get your Friday practice in front of your race weekend and all that, but if you want to turn laps at your local racetracks, like when I say local, I mean within 6 hours or whatever, like that's your option.
Yeah. It's almost like there should be, I know there's already three levels for most track day organizations, but sometimes it would be nice to have like maybe four levels. Like you got to be your beginner, novice, your intermediate, your advanced, but maybe there should be a
Like a
dedicated,
like a race license level.
like a racer practice. And even
Yeah.
within racer practice, you still have even a massive skill level between novice, expert, and pro who may be in the same category now.
But at the very least, maybe you can just be like, look, that's fine. You want to ride in this level, that's fine. You might get stuffed
Yeah.
by the guy who's doing 10s or 11s at Blackhawk.
Sure. Like you got Jason Farrell in the same program as like a new novice racer now, which is
Mm-hmm.
maybe 10 seconds away in lap time.
There's, you know, there's something to be, that's such an interesting thing. And that's something that I've seen over the years. I don't shoot for other orgs anymore, but I used to shoot for Ducati Indianapolis. Um, and I shot for a couple like forums. You remember Asphalt Junkies?
Yeah, yeah, I've heard of it.
Yeah. Actually, my Gixxer 750 I bought from Brandon, if you know him, the guy that
Okay.
started that. Yeah. And I won't get into that. Whatever. The but I shot a lot of off-brand stuff, we'll just say, non-STT stuff. And not that Ducati Indianapolis generally ran really really good days, but um they worked with some other organizations, and every now and again some weird stuff happened. And I particularly remember this other group that ran the day for them oversold the day.
Oh,
And
too many people.
huh
Too many riders on the track.
correct, yeah, well, they like their website didn't cut it off at the right time or something. But whereas STT would call people back and do the difficult thing where you say, hey, sorry, you can't come, they didn't do that. And then on top of that, they also ran a racer school in novice.
Hmm.
Yeah. Um,
Novice track day, not novice racer.
in the novice group, the race school ran in novice in the same session as novice group. They just had jerseys on. There were people in the paddock crying. Like
Like
in
from being scared.
yes, because you had this race school just buzzing the novice groups all
Oh
session.
no.
Like it was, and then on top of that, intermediate was just like there was never a gap. Like the entire track was just full. like, I mean, it was such a shit show. There were a lot of people, so from a photography standpoint, it was a good opportunity to make money because just more people on track means more money. But and I'm sure that was part of the motivation of the oversold day too, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you don't turn people away. You got more people paying you, but it was just like there's a reason they sort of have like these unspoken numbers of like how well, I mean, they say them, but like, this track is this many miles and we can put this many people on at a time. But what's interesting about it is there aren't any laws that govern that.
No, it's all organization based policies, right?
Right. So that video I did with Massera, I mean, it was about him passing, but quite a bit of the content ended up being about how track days came to be, right? And you've probably been to a few of those days where like one of your buddies rents the track and then we all just chip in.
Yeah.
Like I've done some Jennings days like that where, you know, and that's what track days were, right? And that's at the end of the day, that's it, right? There isn't actually a governing body that says you need to put the novice people with the novice people and the advanced people with the advanced people. That just makes sense, and over time people figured it out. But really, all sport bike track time or Motovid or anybody else is doing is renting the track and then selling you a spot. Like it's the same as all your buddies getting together and dividing up the cost of renting the track. It's just they're just doing it at a profit, which is fine. That's not, you know, I mean, they're working. You deserve a profit, but you know what I'm saying. Like it's an interesting thing to think about, where it feels very regulated, but there is no regulation.
Sure. Yeah, there is no like government saying you have to do X, Y, Z, but STT's been doing it for how many years now? 20 some years, I think, and maybe longer than that before
Yeah.
the name changed. But yeah, it's there used to be
The
no
Sylvania Superbike was only a year or two, if that's what you're saying. Yeah.
yeah. So there
Yeah.
there used to be no track day organizations. It was like if you want to be on the racetrack, you either race or you don't ride.
People would show up to Friday practice just to ride and with no expectation to race.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was what they would do. Or you would get your buddies together and rent the racetrack. Which yeah, it's. I mean, I guess the only actual maybe governing body is the fact that they have to be able to carry insurance.
Yeah, just have some liability and sign some
Right.
waivers.
So their insurance company might say, "Yeah, we would really like it if you did it like this."
Yeah. So I've been looking into doing this private coaching stuff, and they're telling me
Oh yeah, good luck getting insurance for that.
you need to have a team of medical personnel and medical staff and all these different people to
Yeah.
recommend your person to if they have a crash. And so organizations like Sport Bike Track Time and WERA and CCS, ASRA, Moto America, they have a network of trained medical personnel on site and ambulance and EMTs so that if there is a crash, they're not down for 3 hours because there's a transport. They have multiple ambulances on site and all this stuff that
Mm-hmm.
costs money. So yes, you might be paying $200 or more per track day, but it's a $1,500 a day for each ambulance, right? And all these other costs that you don't think about.
Yeah, I mean, you say the word racing to insurance companies, and a lot of them won't even talk to you. I know this from the photography stuff, and I don't really feel what I'm doing is all that dangerous, but it is what it is. Yeah, yeah. Coaching, I didn't even think about that when you mentioned it, but coaching racing actually probably is somewhat scary because who knows what your customer is going to say. He told me to do this, and now I'm a paraplegic.
It's a massive liability. And so through this USMCA, when I get accepted, um, they offer liability insurance for coaches, which is a massive, massive thing for us.
Yeah, it's huge. Yeah, that's a yeah. If there's a big group, it makes it a little easier to do, I suppose. Yeah,
Yeah. And
that's
there's
cool.
about 400 coaches in the country right now, so I could be one of these 400 or so coaches. It's a fairly new organization that's popping up, but it sounds like I just got certified for CPR, AED, and first aid, as well as sexual abuse training. I did concussion wise, heat wise, and cardiac wise training certified as well.
It's funny that there's a little bit of corporate world stuff in there.
Yep, a little
Uh,
bit of everything going on because I could be coaching kids or people, it's high propensity for concussions and you're always in high heat weather. And so I just learned about certain like heart diseases. I've never even like Marfan syndrome, that's pretty unique. Where you have like really long fingers and arms and there's a high chance of cardiac arrest. Um, Now, years ago, I was actually certified as a certified nurse assistant, a CNA, and I got CPR, AED, first aid, but it's been long expired. So just a couple days ago, it was good to get that renewed.
hmm, that's interesting. Have you ever worked in that field or?
So I was a CNA in high school. I got certified as it was like my first and second hour, and as my senior year. So I worked in Detroit at the Veterans, the VA hospital, but I never did it as a paid job. It was always like a volunteer.
Okay, because I mean that's a
Well,
lucrative industry.
yeah, I liked it. I thought I wanted to go into the medical industry for a little while, but I kind of decided against going to school for 12 more years. It wasn't really like as a CNA, you're the lowest person on the totem pole. You're changing diapers, you're feeding people, you're I worked on the hospice and the rehab side of Veterans Hospital in Detroit. So for all the veterans, it was pretty eye-opening because half of the patients that I started with were not alive when I finished, and that kind of thing. So
Yeah, that's gotta be a strange experience. I
it
mean,
as a high school student, it takes a toll on you. Like I was like, I don't really think I want to do this as a career. Like people are dying every other
no,
day and
no,
like
no, for
people
sure.
abusing drugs and like rehab as far as drug abuse and um, like quadriplegic patients who just had no movement other than their head. I'm like, this is like the deep end. Like I don't know that I want to be doing this.
At a young age, I knew I didn't want to do that kind of thing. I didn't want to be in the military, and I didn't want to work in the medical field. I don't want to deal with people dying, and I don't want part of my job to have to kill someone.
Yeah.
It just that was just me. And thank God other people are willing to do it because it needs to be done. We need people in our military, and we definitely need nurses. Just not me.
Yeah, and for me, like if I was gonna continue with the medical field, I wanted to be like a decision maker. Not to poo poo on anybody who's a nurse or a CNA. Those jobs are absolutely needed. But for me, I wanted to be like a doctor or something, and I just didn't have it in me to go to school for 12 years. So that was never going to be my course of my path of travel.
Well, I mean, I can tell you, I got into network engineering because at one point well, when I was in photography school, I was sort of young, idealistic kid who didn't feel like money mattered. And at one point, it occurred to me that it did, and I realized that and then I found something I enjoyed doing that is lucrative and has a future. I mean, it's not going away. Funny photography. There were careers in photography when I got into photography, and it's not that there aren't now, but there aren't now. You know what I mean? I mean, like you could go work at a newspaper when I was younger. Now they don't really have a photographer staff like
Unless
they used to.
you're unless you're like Brian J. Nelson, how do you make a career in photography?
Well, Brian J. Nelson's a great example, right? Brian J. Nelson's no different than me. He just does it full time. And look, I'm not saying I'm as good or whatever as Brian J. Nelson or anything like that, but that guy grinds. I don't, and I think he would agree with me on this. Uh, that's not what I mean when I say career photographer. When I'm talking career photographer, I'm like you have a W-2 job where
Yeah,
you
you're a
work for a
salary employee.
yeah, you work for a corporation or a newspaper or whatever it is, and then they send you and assign you to do things, and you collect your paycheck. Um, Brian, so I was shooting for the AMA a few years ago. Brian was there as well. And he came to me. He said, "Hey, can you get this one photo?" The worst thing at those things is that you got to shoot the awards, right? If you have an actual assigned thing. So I shoot the AMA awards, and it's like I got to drive back to Indianapolis from Alabama. Like I want to go, but I got to stay like a couple more hours and wait around for the awards to get together. Well, he needed a picture of one guy for the awards, and he goes, "Can you get that picture? I got to get on the road." It was Sunday night. He's like, "I got to be in California at Laguna Seca on Tuesday," and he's in his van. And I'm like, yeah, I'll get your picture. I'll get it. Like, it's cool. But like, he, like, as much as I love doing this, like, I mean, I think he's on the road like 250 days a year, and he's grinding. Like, he's, he is that business. He's not employed by, the New York Times or the Dayton Daily News back where I was from. There's a guy he's retired now, but a guy I know that was a Dayton Daily News photographer, and there was a whole staff of photographers back when I was in my teens and 20s when he worked there, and now they just send the writer with their iPhone. It's not the same. I mean, when I was in college for photography, it was still film, and it wasn't film for nostalgic reasons. It's like digital photography was in its infancy. Um, so it's just different. But yes, Brian's such a beast as well. Like you can't break into the business because that guy just covers everything. Like, another guy you got to take a look at if you're interested in this stuff is Andrew Wheeler.
Okay.
He was a MotoGP photographer and he still does it some, not as heavy as he used to, but he lives over in Texas now. But I think he's British. But Brian and Andrew were when I got into the motorsports photography thing. They were both people that I looked at, I guess, as I mean, inspiration is the right word, but it's not the only word. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Because you're looking at their styles and what they do and how they shoot and what works. And those guys, I thought made some of the best content. So
for sure. Definitely very well published or publicized.
I mean, Brian for sure. I mean, Brian's just everywhere. I believe Moto America employs him, and then he's able to sell to other people individually as well. And then sometimes the AMA employs him. Like when you're double dipping like that, and you've already got your travel covered on one way, and then you can shoot for other orgs at the same time. And anyway, you know what I'm saying.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah, it's good all around. All around.
yeah, but the moral of the story really is that, especially that moment when he was driving to California, made me think like I could probably do this full time. I might be able to make as much money as I make doing network engineer work, but it'd be way more work.
Oh
I
yeah,
mean, I'd be way more work, way more travel. Um, and I don't know if that's what I want, you know, but I like doing it. I want to shoot more racing though. Track days are fun, but racing is funner.
for sure. A lot more going on. So we've actually already achieved our 2 hour mark. So is there anything else on your mind you wanted to talk about?
Well, we didn't get any like juicy politics or talking shit about anybody like that, you know.
Not yet.
But other than that, I mean, that's it. I mean, I don't know. I mean, do you want to talk about Brian Van? Do you want to talk about abortion?
There's so many things.
Do you want to talk about Joe Biden losing the election? Wait, I mean, stealing the election. January 6th committee.
We're gonna have to do this on a yearly basis.
Right. But no, I mean, those were the only things I thought we might get into that we didn't. But you know, we could talk about cryptocurrency. I'm into that, but no, but yeah, we've been on here for a while, so I get it.
I gotta get off here, make some dinner, grab another beer or so, and work on another couple of podcasts I gotta edit.
Yeah, for sure. I look forward to seeing what you got there. Um, I think I do want you to take a look at the thing with Monty and the Massera thing, because it's the closest video that I've made to this kind of thing, and I think you'd enjoy it. It had a lot of interesting history of the track day stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Send it over to me. Maybe I'll put it in the notes of this episode.
yeah, take a look at it. I mean, obviously no rush, but you know, take a look at it. So cool.
Absolutely.
Well, good to get to know you a little bit. I will certainly um to wrap up, I will say this. I talk to so many people at the track and vaguely recognize them, and then certain people break through that barrier, and I would say we're past that now. I don't know what that sounds like for me to say that, but it's it's just one of those things where it's like I know that guy, kinda, but they all know me. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, so I'm hoping that people see this and like reach out to you and want some more photography from you, whether it's I don't know if you do weddings or other events, but
I don't. If I do a wedding, I tell people not to tell anybody.
to look you
I
up for
do other kinds of things.
yeah, to look you up for whatever they need in your area. You're in the Midwest area, so hopefully they
Yeah,
get to know you and me and get to know the sport bike community a little bit better and not be so scared of it and maybe come out to an event and
for sure,
let's go.
for sure. All right. Well, hopefully we'll talk soon.
And where can people find you online? Where are you out there on the
Oh, electricimages.com. Um, and the Facebook page is probably a better place to find me, just because the point of sale the website is a point of sale site, but it has links to. There's also an Instagram. They're all electricimages.com. I think that's it. I think that's basically the ways to find me.
All
You
right.
know,
Very
pretty
good.
simple.
Well, I'll try to get this out before August 1st, before I leave for Virginia, but no guarantees, so it might be a little after that. But either
I
way,
mean, I'm in no rush. I'm just talking on the video phone with you. So
for sure. So it'll be out in a couple weeks. And be sure to check out Joseph Hansen, Electric Eye Images, and EricSwahnRacing.com.
all right, talk to you soon, man.
All right, man. Have a good one.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye.